Toute affection endommageant le cerveau est susceptible de faire apparaître des troubles de la mémoire. Certaines lésions s'installent de façon subite. C'est le cas des traumatismes du crâne, cause la plus fréquente d'amnésie chez les jeunes. C'est le cas aussi des accidents vasculaires cérébraux, infarctus, hémorragie, rupture de malformations vasculaires. Il existe aussi des infections cérébrales fulgurantes, comme la redoutable méningoencéphalite à virus herpès. Dans certains cas d'amnésie, selon la gravité de la partie endommagée du cerveau, les médecins de la mémoire peuvent aider les patients à reconstituer certains éléments de leur passé. Mais jusqu'à présent, ils ne sont pas parvenus à reconstituer les éléments de la mémoire récente, celle de l'instant que l'on vient de vivre. C'est le cas de Clive.
Oh, no, really? Yes, I'm not interested in that. Well, can you tell me what the hell's wrong with me? I've never seen a doctor the whole, never heard a word, never drunk anything, tasted anything, smelled anything, anything at all. It's like being dead.
I know.
I've been blind the whole bloody time and I'm deaf.
I know. Well, what do you want to know
What's
about
wrong?
it?
Exactly. Which part of the brain and how did what did it happen?
It's
Who
called
put it there?
herpetic encephalitis. It was a virus which nobody put there. It just got there
How?
and went to
Where
the
did it come
brain.
from?
We don't know where it came from.
How long has it been there?
It's been there about a year. You didn't know your name. You didn't know your name, you didn't know your address, you didn't know who you were, where you were, anything. They traced you by your Barclay card and they rang me up. And I came and collected you. I was beside myself by that time, having litters of kittens not knowing where you were. I was very worried about you, darling.
It's not much fun on you, is it, what's happened? It's not much fun for you, what's happened.
They took me into the corridor and we stood next to some fire extinguishers with lots of people rushing past us. And they said they were very sorry, but they thought there was a very high risk of your dying. It's a very pleased to tell somebody something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, without any information about what it is either, not the sort of thing that you ought to know immediately.
No.
What? No. Gosh, it's very soggy, it's very
It's
wet,
soggy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Look at the view.
How long has
so
it been?
hazy, isn't
How
it?
long has it
You
been?
hardly see
Just don't
anything.
worry about views for a moment. Just how long was that?
How long what?
How long did they take to sort of get through to that point?
You've been ill for 12 days before you went into hospital.
Yeah. And then they got into the hospital. Could they analyse what it was?
It took 11 hours once you got into hospital to work out what it was.
Oh, God, that's rather exceptional, isn't it?
Yeah,
How many cases did they have this a year?
hardly any.
Where did I get it from?
I don't
How
know.
many cases a year?
About 50.
1 per million.
Yeah.
Amazing, isn't it? People die of it.
I want to ask you, I think, what might seem an awkward question, and if it seems impudent or painful, you must tell me at once. So much of our personal identity is related to what we can remember, and who we are is, in some sense, is the sum of what we think we are and what we've been. How hard is it to have a relationship with someone and retain a sense that it is him when he himself has got such an inadequate sense of his own extension backwards in time?
It sounds ludicrous to say so, but as a person, soul, or whatever you want to call it, his soul is unchanged. His person is unchanged. He's the same man. He's still my husband.
Yes, indeed.
À l'époque où ces photos ont été prises, Clive était un homme mentalement tout à fait normal. Il avait une bonne mémoire et montrait des dons exceptionnels pour la musique. Un examen au scanner n'aurait pu déceler la moindre anomalie dans son cerveau. En mars 1985, le virus du herpes simplex, jusque-là inactif, a commencé à proliférer dans son système nerveux. Il s'est attaqué à certaines parties de son cerveau et les a endommagées irréversiblement. Le lobe temporal droit, le lobe frontal et surtout le lobe temporal gauche. Toutes ces zones ont été nécrosées et le liquide céphalorachidien a pris la place des espaces laissés vides. Après cette maladie pratiquement mortelle, sa santé physique est revenue, bien qu'il soit parfois sujet à des crises d'épilepsie partielle. Mais Clive souffre d'une amnésie massive et quasiment impénétrable.
When
some
did
way.
you actually start this diary procedure? Was it his idea or was it yours?
Well, I had noticed he started writing on bits of paper by the bed. And it wasn't until about October last year that he began to use the diary and note down the time of day all the time. It's a chronology of the days, simply. Because he's in a constant state of thinking he's just woken up and won't acknowledge that he's been awake before, even if he sees it in his own handwriting.
But otherwise, the diary itself has no content at all. We see here we have Tuesday, May the 13th, which was the day that we started filming with him. And he says 9:23, awake first time, builder's noise is be awful. And that was in fact when he was distressed when we first came, because he'd been upset by the noise. Now the interesting thing is there's an entry for 10:23, awake, playing cards elsewhere. The next entry is 12:55, and there's actually no record of what happened in that previous 2 hours. Now, if you remember, between 10:23 and 12:55, we were doing that filming in the hospital chapel with the choir.
Bien que Clive ait déjà vu sa femme ce matin, il l'accueille comme s'il la voyait pour la première fois depuis des années.
Just come and sit down.
It was like dying and being dead.
I'm not dead, though.
It feels like it. You've never seen me, never touched anything. What's it like? What's it like when you're dead, you know?
I haven't tried it, sweetie.
Neither have I. I don't know whether any consciousness is actually transferred to it, but if you never see anything, never see anything I've touched, not the sense of being in connection with anything at all. You're exactly like being dead.
I know. Give us a kiss. It's lovely to see you.
It's wonderful to see you. You've no idea how much better it is to see you.
Look, I've got an organ.
I used to play it.
Did you?
Yes, when I was a kid.
Do you want to open it? I'll switch it on.
Have you playing at all?
Yes.
What?
Yes. You played quite a lot.
Really?
Here.
Il est difficile de savoir si le large sourire avec lequel il accueille cette femme, membre de la chorale qu'il dirigeait autrefois, signifie qu'il la reconnaît réellement.
Your looks belie you then. You look wonderful.
Perhaps you're awfully well is what I mean.
Linda would sing something with you, because you know how my voice is.
You be a... Do you know... How about that one?
Yeah, that's fine,
Okay.
If my complaints could pass you through, or make love see wherein I suffer wrong, my heart for thy unkindness breaks. All love I live and die in thee. Yet for redress thou lay'st me still complain.
I like the
yeah.
keyboard down.
Fascinating,
Dès que la musique commence, la personnalité professionnelle de Clive semble se rétablir. Et celui qui ne le saurait pas ne pourrait jamais se douter que des pans entiers de sa mémoire sont pratiquement inexistants. Mais quand la musique s'arrête, il se retrouve perdu, désorienté. Et souvent, il improvise ou affabule et s'invente un passé imaginaire comme s'il tentait de remplacer celui qu'il a oublié.
Thank you all very much. It's lovely. I waved, you sang.
You've been very well trained.
Well, you had exactly the right place. It's an extraordinary experience to be blind and deaf and dumb for so long. Suddenly this morning I have no idea how I got here. I have no memory of it at all. I don't even know how I walked in through that door.
Really?
And the consciousness has actually come to light since I've been standing in there.
Yes.
Have I been conducting before?
Oh, yes.
Have I really? I didn't know that.
Very well, too.
But this today is the first time I've actually been conscious of doing anything at all. How extraordinary.
Do you remember who we are now? Do you recognise
I can't remember anybody's names.
No. But do you remember our faces?
The face is very familiar.
Oh, good.
That's not the problem at all. But I can't remember any names at all of anybody. I can remember my own. That's about the only one.
Yes.
I just feel as if I was woken up for the first time. And I've been, in fact, asleep, as it were, the whole time that I've been ill. And then suddenly today, during the course of the performance of those pieces, everything has switched from being blind and deaf into sight and sound. Everything's suddenly come back again. I can also feel things with my fingers.
Do you remember playing the organ
Yeah.
a little while ago? Yes.
I didn't know that. No, that's a mystery to me. Did I play it very badly? That's
No,
why
you
I
played,
can't
you
remember.
played beautifully.
Did I play it right?
You accompanied Linda in a song.
Did I really?
She sang a Darling Blues song and you played. It was very, very nice.
No, I've been blind and deaf the whole time, until today. This is the first time I've had any sight and any sound at all. And suddenly I can see in colour. That's the other exciting thing. The odd bits of sight that I've had before have been black and white all the time. But they're completely unmemorable. I can't remember much about them at all. But it's an extraordinary thing. I can hear things now. I can hear traffic noise outside.
Yes,
Yes, I never heard any noise at all. So your music's brought it back. It's wonderful the way you did it. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Well, thank you. We've enjoyed it. It's a great pleasure. Brings back old times.
It takes the clock back a bit. doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
And what was the first thing you saw this morning when you came?
I don't know. I don't know. There's no connection with it at all. I've got it now in colour for the first time. And that's happened within the last 2 minutes.
And where are we now?
This is a chapel I know very well. I used to work in it. I can't remember its name. It's very familiar. But I was ill here for a very long time.
Here?
Yes. Connected with it in some way. No, wait a minute. I personally wasn't ill. No, that's right. I used to come here in the summer. That's right. And help to run the places while the staff were on their holiday. So you imagine what it's like, the problem for staff who run a hospital sort of set up, well, they want to have a summer holiday. So I started when I was at Cambridge, and I used to come into hospitals, and I began to set that up myself to be in charge of it, in fact, for the whole country. Because luckily, places like Cambridge and Oxford draw their students from all over the country. So physically, you've got them scattered all over. And you can put teams together to carry out hospital jobs during the summer holidays while the major staff are having their break. And I was in charge of that for some years.
And this was one of the places where you worked?
Yes, indeed it was.
Passage?
Yes. It's very familiar. It's a long time since I've seen it. I think my eyes are open today for the first time. I mean, I've been blind and deaf the whole time I've been ill. And I've no sense of taste. None of the senses have been working at all. And in fact, I can't remember now what was going on this morning or why I was here, because that has no memory for me at all. I don't know whether people sang or what happened. I have no clue. As far as I'm concerned, the first thing that happened is my eyes have opened. And this is the first morning that I've had any conscious memory at all of anything at all since I've been ill. I've never seen a thing, talked to anything about about the problems to anybody at all. This is the first time I had a conversation with him. So what's been happening, I haven't any idea at all. But to be blind and deaf is very, very odd. Very few human beings, I suspect, who have it. Darling!
In fact, he doesn't remember a single event that has ever happened to him. He knows about things. His semantic memory is relatively unimpaired, and he'll know where he went to school and so forth, but he cannot remember a single thing that's ever happened to him. He's absolutely no episodic memory at all.
So we have to distinguish then between episodic and semantic.
Yes.
I mean, he knows things about the world, but cannot remember events.
He knows I'm his wife, but he can't remember getting married to me.
Yes.
He knows he's got children, but he can't remember having them.
Now, Clive's responses to your reappearances, how long does the gap have to be for him to be surprised by your return?
Between 10 and 15 minutes. Now.
Try to be perfect as well. That's what I'm trying to do.
You say that he would phone you frequently and use the answering service, so he remembered his telephone number.
He does remember his telephone number, which he's had for about 16 years.
And he also remembers how to use a telephone.
And he remembers how to reverse the charges.
No, darling, look, it's Clive here. It's 10 to 7. I haven't spoken to anybody in this place. I know nothing about this case at all. I just want to speak to you, please. Can you come and see me, please, as soon as you possibly can? I don't care about anybody else in the world, just you, please. Please come. Love you. Bye-bye, darling. Well, as a matter of fact, it's 4 minutes past 7. This is Clive here. I don't want to speak to anyone else. I only want to speak to you, darling. Can you come and see me, please? I have no clue what's happened. I just want to talk to you. No one else in the world matters. You're the only person I love. Please come soon. I don't care how late it is. Come to me at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. I don't mind. I just love you, and I want you to come as soon as you can, please, darling. Take care. I love you. I haven't seen you yet, and I want to. Please come, darling. Bye-bye. Oh, it's 7:15, darling. This is Clive here, in case you don't recognize my voice. I have no idea what's been going on. I haven't actually had any possible inquiries at all here. I'd much rather talk to you. If there's any way you can get to me tonight, please do come. I just want to see you, please. Please come, darling. Please come. Please come. Bye-bye.
The musical memory, I feel there is a much, I don't just feel, I see there is much greater attention. And when, for example, he's playing a piece which has repeat marks, when he was particularly ill, he would just keep playing the piece over and over again, not knowing that he'd already played it once. But fairly early on, and before I noticed marked improvement verbally or visually, he was able to play, for example, a piece of polyphony, follow on with a section of soli, go back to a repetitio, get to the fine, and end. Why? Why do you think the musical memory is...
There is something different about music. It's very hard to say what it is. People often refer to music as if it was a language. Well, it's a communication, for sure. It's something that one person does for another, and it brings about an effect. But it's not like a language in certain very important ways. For example, when you speak of language, it's possible to paraphrase it. It's very hard to imagine what a paraphrase in a piece of music would be like.
Yes.
What would a paraphrase of the first 10 bars of of the Diabelli variation, if you like. You know, say it again, say the same thing in a different way in music. It's inconceivable.
Yes.
So it's quite clear there's something different about the communication of music to the communication of language. It's organized in a different way. And I suppose that if that is the case, that it must be computed in a different way, and therefore stored and then retrieved in a different way. So that although an injury of the sort that Clive has sustained has had a global effect on almost every aspect of his capacity to retain and then retrieve information, for some reason, this musical capacity has been least injured of all.
Is it because it uses another part of the brain, the right hemisphere?
We do know in Clive's case that the left side is much more seriously damaged than the right, and there is evidence to show that the right seems to be more concerned with that type of musical discrimination than the left is. The left is much more concerned with logical connections and the sort of connections which make it possible to speak and organize language. But there's evidence to show that there are many aspects of visual processing which also seem to be done best on the right side of the brain. That the capacity to see whole shapes and to recognize faces, for example, is much more highly developed on the right than on the left.
Where are you there? Dressed in a white coat?
Yes, it's just after a concert or rehearsal for it.
Why are people carrying trays and bottles of wine?
They're just going to try and get themselves worked up ready for the concert.
You look as if you're in some kind of uniform.
Yes, I am. The others aren't.
You look like a waiter. You think you
I've
look
just
like a
been
waiter?
conducting by the look of that, yeah. I've been conducting a concert and these are the people after.
Or an ice cream man or something. I've never seen you conduct dressed like that.
Yeah, we used to use that system.
You do look to me like a waiter, darling. Oh, look. Oh, very distinguished.
No, that one, yeah. That
What's
was if
that?
I was a student at Cambridge at the time.
Or just finished being.
Yes, I just got my degree, I think.
What was your degree?
Oh, I mean.
Do you know where we are?
Yeah. Looks like a place I used to work in.
Do you know where, more to the point, do you know where we're going?
Yes, Cambridge.
Yes!
Because I thought immediately this was a place I used to go to when I was a student at Cambridge. And I used to work in these places, actually organise them in the summer with staff from the university students for something like 15 years. And I used to bring students from Cambridge to work in these places all over the country. Because Cambridge students, luckily, were drawn from all over the country. So you'd have them from places like Leeds or Birmingham. I was at Clare, so, and, which is very close to King's. It's almost next door. I sang in the chapel choir at Clare, personally, but I set up all sorts of things for the university as a whole. In fact, the University Musical Club, which I organised. I don't remember its name now. It's terrible. I used to know all sorts of things.
What about the building of the chapel?
I have to think very hard. It's years since I've seen it. Yes, that is this one.
It's that one?
And it might be from the outside. No, it's not. No.
What's that?
I can't remember.
Do you think it's in Cambridge?
Yes, it is. I recognise that. I used to know that one very well.
But you think this is Clare? Which bit of the building is it?
It's the chapel.
The chapel.
And they asked him, what art thou there? Art thou Elias? Art thou Elias? And he said, I am not.
I can't sing these things without knowing anything about them.
How do you think?
I don't know. I mean, it's madness. It's madhouse.
Who is the music by, do you know?
It's very familiar. I can't remember now.
That's it.
That's it.
I have no knowledge of doing that at all. It's entirely new to me. I have no knowledge of doing that whatever. This is the first time I've seen anything the whole time I've been ill. Since I come and sit in this room, I actually hear things for the first time. I can see things for the first time.
And that was you singing in
I have no
Clare
knowledge of
Chapel
it at
on
all.
Friday.
I have no knowledge of that at all.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. Presumably the brain is not working properly. No one put anything right. But now, consciously for the first time, I actually see things for the first bloody time since I've been ill.
Yes.
I've not seen anything, not heard anything, not tasted anything, not smelt anything. In no sense have I been conscious. I thought I was dead.
But there you were conscious.
Yes,
And
I
we
know.
got
Not
it on
conscious to
film.
me. Not conscious to me.
But you were conscious
I know
enough
nothing
to
about
sing
it
and
at
play.
all. That's the first time I've seen it. I had nothing to do with that noise. Not been connected with me in any way.
Well, what would you offer as an explanation for that?
Some stupid thing that the illness has attacked the brain and it's completely disconnected any connection with me. Anything that's been done has nothing to do with me personally.
Well, who was singing there?
Presumably me, but I know nothing about it.
Well, that is what happens, you see, in this illness, is that it separates your present from your past because of this.
Well, I've now got my presence back again for the first time. I've not consciously seen a damn thing the whole time I've been ill. Neither I tasted anything, heard anything, smelt anything, or had any words with anybody.
You had your presence there in Cambridge.
I have no knowledge of it. I have no knowledge of it.
What you haven't
No, I have no knowledge of it whatever.
To retain it.
It's in no way connected with me.
Because you can't remember it.
No, what I do is not connected with me in any way. So what's been happening, I haven't the faintest idea. Why the doctors can't make you conscious, I don't know. Because I've been unconscious the whole time that was done. I know nothing about it at all.
You can't sing when you're unconscious.
I have done so.
Well, I think what happens is this, Clive, you were conscious at the time.
They're not conscious to me. No, not to me. Not to me. The consciousness involved me.
It does. You're quite right.
I know nothing about that at all. Never seen it at all. Never heard it. I know nothing of what's been done. I have no memory of any music whatever the whole time I've been ill. I've been trying to find out why not.
Well, if the brain isn't in a state in which it can receive the information and retain it...
No, it hasn't. The brain has not received any kind of information of any kind. No sight. I've seen nothing. I've seen nothing, not heard anything, tasted anything, smelt anything, felt anything. I haven't been in contact with human beings consciously at all.
Do you know where you were when you were singing?
No, haven't a clue. Never seen that before. That's news to me.
How would you like some coffee now?
I'd like something to make me conscious again. I've been unconscious the whole bloody time. I've been dead.
What do you think it would be nice to have some coffee? It might help, don't you think?
What would you say if I told you conducted the Lassus Ensemble last week?
That's hilarious.
I thought you'd say that.
That's absolutely hysterical. I know not at all.
Do you want me to prove it to you?
This is the strangest thing I've ever seen. Yeah, that's a long time ago.
Sing it.
No, I can't do that. I remember that now.
How would you conduct it?
Oh, I did. No, I did. I can't remember. Gosh. I haven't seen myself conduct before. I do that subconsciously. I'm completely unconscious about it. How astonishing. I don't remember doing that at all. No knowledge of it at all. I'm chatting.
It seems quite clear that memory is much more complicated serial process in which experiences are very elaborately transformed in the process of being perceived, let alone remembered. And then it has to go through very, very complicated redistribution into various addresses, to use computer terminology, and is assigned to various types of systems, various classifications. And it may well be that under certain circumstances, it can be retrieved under one description,
yes,
when it's completely inaccessible under another.
But are memories contained in the neurons, do you think? I mean, where are the memories? Where are they in the chemicals? Are they in the electric impulses between the synapses? Are they in the neurons?
I think there's no answer to that question, even put in that form, because we don't quite know what type of system we are. At the moment, the prevailing model is the computational one, and therefore we use words like addresses in order to describe where things are.
But look at Clive's brain. If you look at the CAT scans and you see the vast areas which have been destroyed, and where the neurons just don't exist anymore, one would have thought that quite a lot of knowledge has gone. And yet, although if you ask him, he'll say he hasn't got the knowledge, very often, with the right clues and prompts and cues and the right mood, state of mind and so forth, you can get a flash of knowledge which you'd assumed wasn't there anymore.
But it's clear from using the computer model that it's not quite like a container in the purely mechanical, voluminous sense.
Yes.
It's not like a box into which you can put so much and the rest of it overflows, and that if you lose boxes, you lose memories.
Yes.
It's obviously organized in a very different way to that. Now, the present way of looking at it incorporates some sort of flow chart in which we see things being, first of all, assigned to a primary level, which is often called iconic or echoic, as if it was simply a picture or a tape recording of the sound
in the forefront
of the mind, whatever the forefront is.
Yes.
And then it goes to some short-term store, and then after some sort of elaborate transformation is then allocated to something more long-term, which is not in the immediate working memory, but can nevertheless be retrieved.
Yes.
Now, although these sorts of patterns and charts and diagrams are used to describe what goes on, we have no real idea about what sort of material representation corresponds to these flowcharts, or whether the flowcharts are anything more than a sort of vaguely explanatory device.
One reads so often, memory is fundamental to human beings. Memory is what marks humans out from animals. And Clive himself has often remarked quite spontaneously, and I have never suggested the thought to him, when we're discussing that he hasn't, his memory isn't functioning properly, he often volunteers, that makes me like animals then, doesn't it? And yet, despite all the many times that this has been said, I've never lost sight of the Cliveness of Clive. And he has always, throughout the illness, been exactly the same person. But from Clive's point of view, he often feels that he's been reduced to no life at all. And he often attributes his blankness, his lack of memory of anything that's preceded that moment, as to death. He often says, I think I must have been dead. And he thinks his condition is like death. And he very often expresses the wish that he'd been allowed to die, because although we have moments when he is happy and we have a lovely walk together in the sunshine, he enjoys playing the piano, and I haven't lost sight of the Cliveness of Clive, nevertheless, he spends a very great deal of his time in a never-ending agony, trapped, as I said, in the present tense, moment to moment. What of Clive's future? We know that his capacity to improve is slight. I don't know at this stage how to see the next 30 years stretching ahead of us. What will it be? 24 hours after 24 hours of perseverating, an agony for him. And how do you see his future? Given that he still has the capacity to be a huge human being through his music and through loving me, but he can't do that all the time, and there's quite a lot of time when he's alone and he's trapped in what he calls his hell on earth. I don't know how to plan his future, how to help him to make his life worth living. Thank you.